months ago, okay, I'll use this. 7 months ago, I saw God's hand guide this church. We didn't have a space, and God provided this space. We didn't have a place for Sunday school. God provided the space next door for our children and our youth. Beginning next year, 2024, we're going to have, we've renegotiated a contract for this space so that we will have it more often. Basically, we'll be sharing it with the Civitan, and the Civitan won't be renting it out to anyone else. So we'll have this space whenever we need it. That's exciting. Every time we've had a need, God has provided it, and that's amazing to me. One of the other things that has been wonderful is the growth of this church. You saw today, including myself and my family, we have 209 members in this church now. We have a strong financial footing. To date, the giving has been, I think it was $305,000 to date. And that is amazing for 7 months. Because of that giving, we've been able to establish a fully funded budget. We have also established 2 months of reserve fund so that, if we had any needs, we can fulfill those for at least 2 months, and we will grow that as time goes on. The other thing is we've started a building fund. Right now, there's $25,000 in that fund, and hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to transfer another $25,000 along with that. And we've also had pledges or actual giving of another $14,000 towards that building fund already. So those are all great things. As Pastor Dan said, God is good. All the time.
God is good.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm sure most of you know me, but my name is Chuck Calder. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing. We're doing, were you supposed to go next? Come on. All right, go a couple. No, that was, go back. Oh, that was it. Right there. Okay, that's all I got to talk about. So, what we have been doing, in addition to working on getting this space locked down and fully utilizing this space, and just for the record, this space is about 10,000 square feet altogether. So if you want to get a feel for what our needs are, about 10,000 square feet. We've evaluated a dozen buildings, many suggestions from you. You said, what about this place? Well, we check it out. What about that place? Let's check it out. Let's see how big it is. Let's see if it's available. Let's see how much parking it has. All that stuff. And there's nothing in Clayton, I'm just telling you. There's nothing available that will allow us to do what we're doing. Part of that is because of our growth, our size. So we've also been looking at land to possibly build a church in the future. And so we've been doing that. Any parcel that we see or that comes up for sale, we've had help. A lot of help from Derek and kind of chasing things down and seeing what's available. So we've evaluated 20 pieces of land, and we're still working on that constantly, looking at those kinds of options. And those things are in the works. And we've also talked to at least 3 lending institutions to find out what would it take for us to be able to get a mortgage, to purchase land, to build a church. And so we know what's required, and we're not there yet. And Brian's gonna talk a little bit more about that, but right now, we couldn't buy a property or a building for that matter, or build a building right now, but we're working very hard to get there. That's the key. So we are actively engaged in the future. So and that's really what I want to share with you. I know you can't read this, but we are evaluating any building or space or property that comes to our attention. We are being very intentional about evaluating that. What is it? Where is it? Is it good? How good is it? Does it suit our needs? How much is it? So we're being diligent to plan for the future and secure, what we have here in the short term. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, ask somebody on the planning team on it. But there's quite a few of us on it. So thank you very much.
Next slide. So you heard this morning from Chuck and Beth, and we've heard in a couple of other meetings how much we've grown. So we not only that, we have seen, you've seen, I've seen, so we've seen how much the church has grown in just 7 short months. And just think about it. I'm totally amazed. I sit down and think about it, it's hard to imagine what's been done in 7 months. And the only thing is that we've truly been blessed here at Clayton Methodist Church. There's just no other way to put that. Chuck came back just a few weeks ago from the annual conference, and one thing he brought back from the Global Methodist Church was talking about how they're building the plane that we're all flying on at the same time. And I want to add to that, at Clayton Methodist Church, we're also building the landing strip to land that plane. So that's what's going on now. So as we continue to grow, one thing that we can do is to start a capital campaign to allow us to better plan for our growth and to establish the credit worthiness that we would need to have. And if you think about back when you were first married, I know for some of that's been a long time ago. In our case, Jenny and I, Jenny's grandfather co-signed for us for our very first loan to establish our credit worthiness. So if you kind of look at that the same way, the capital campaign is doing the same thing. It will allow the entire congregation to co-sign for Clayton Methodist Church to be able to grow as we're doing now. Next slide. There we go. So what we're planning is a 2-phase capital campaign. The first phase would be what I call a short-term 6 months to build a capital reserve of around $350,000. The second phase would be a long-term 3-year campaign of another $650,000 to build a plan to be able to pay for a loan. So how did we come up with these numbers? Well, with the work that the planning team has been doing, we know now, at this point anyway, there's no building for us to go in that has this kind of open space for us to meet in. We also know that land in the Clayton area is anywhere from $50,000 to $240,000 an acre. I was totally blown away when we started researching this. So what we did was we budgeted or planned for 10 acres at $100,000 an acre to establish a capital campaign of $1 million. So that's kind of how we got to those numbers. So what will the campaign allow us to do? It's going to allow us to be ready whenever God tells us it's time to move, or whenever the right thing comes along. We've not found that yet. Nothing has, all the doors have not aligned yet, or the windows haven't all been opened yet for this to happen, but it will. We just haven't seen it at this point. And this also will provide the creditworthiness that the banks have told us that they would be looking for from Clayton Methodist Church. So, to get the campaign started, there's been 10 families that have committed a pledge of $40,000 for phase 1 to be paid by the end of this year. And for phase 2, almost another $132,000 for a 3-year pledge. And over $14,000 of, as Beth had mentioned, of phase 1 has already been donated to the church to go to the building fund. So with the information that Beth had spoke about earlier, the formation team had looked at moving $50,000 from the general fund to the building fund, and with the other $47,000 that's been pledged, by the end of this year, we'll have almost $100,000 in the building fund. Now stop and think about that for a minute. In 9 months' time, we've gone from not knowing where we're meeting, how many people might show up on the first Sunday that we met, and we're going to have $100,000 in a capital reserve fund for something. I don't know what something is right this minute, but it will be there. The formation team also looking at our finances and how strong that has been. There's a very good likelihood at the end of the year, and that's what we've committed to do, is to look at the end of the year, that we probably will be able to move more than $50,000 from the general fund into the capital, to the building fund rather, at the end of the year. So we will be providing this information out into our weekly newsletters, so more members of the congregation will be able to see that information. We'll also be putting together pledge cards and having more information available about that. And right now, we're saying we're kind of building this as we're going. I think the plan is to have something available for the first meeting in November, which is maybe the 4th or the 5th Sunday in that time frame of November, to provide that information out to the congregation. Pastor Dan's going to talk a little bit more about other things, other directions of where the church is going.
Thank you, Brian. Y'all are, we've moved from being babies to toddlers. Okay? We're toddlers. That means we're toddling around. We don't know exactly how we're getting there, what we're doing, but we know that God's got us up on our feet for something. And so I want to thank you about what we're doing. I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership. Okay? Right now, our church has been established by about 32 people who got together before our first Sunday to start laying the groundwork for this church. And we chartered, and when we chartered, we said January 1st would be a time for new leadership. And that's what we're working towards. But everything you've just heard, I want to talk to you about how are we going to decide when we borrow money? How are we going to decide where we're going to build or buy or things like that? Well, one thing we're working towards is the church is going to have a church conference when those times are here. And every year we'll have a church conference to do two things: to elect the new leadership of the church, and also to affirm the pastor's salary. But also the church conference goes, before we borrow money, the church has to decide. So the church conference will decide that. Go back one more. And the other thing is, before we purchase land or a building or anything like that, the church conference would have to approve that. Okay? So it's just not 32 people, but what 32 people are doing now is working on your behalf to get ready for that. But we'll all decide together. Next slide. So a church conference will be announced this year for November and December to elect church administrative leadership, a church council basically, and to approve the pastor's compensation. Go forward one, let me see what's next. Okay, so here's what we're proposing for a leadership structure. The formation team has been thinking and planning. Do we have a leadership structure that we just carry over from where we've been? Or do we think outside of the box and develop a leadership structure that is more nimble, that allows us to act more quickly, that streamlines decisions? And so we've been reflecting on that. We've done some research, and what we're proposing is that we have one administrative leadership team that will take care of the finances, that will take care of the personnel, and will take care of any trustees matters we have. And that would be a board of 11 people, 9 rotating people, and 2 ad hoc, not ad hoc, but ex officio members and myself. So it'd be a committee of 12. I think somebody else put together 12 people. Do you all remember that person? And then we'll have the responsibilities of church council, finance, and personnel. What would happen to, there would be a separate nominations committee. We already have that elected right now, but you would elect a new group at our church conference. But they're in the middle. They've been doing a Bible study for 10 days to get ready for our first meeting about leadership and what biblical leadership looks like. And then what happens to ministries? One of the reasons for going to a one board of 12 people would be to free all the other 200 people to do ministry. So that you're not going to 1, 2, 3 meetings once a month just to talk about finances in one meeting, finances in another meeting, finances in a third meeting. But let's just do that in one place, allowing everybody to follow their heart's passion. What are you passionate about? Is it children's ministry? Is it youth ministry? Is it Bible study? Is it going to the to refurbish the rehab center? Is it whatever else God has placed on your heart? You don't have to sit in meetings to prove that. You have to go and do. And so the leaders of those ministries would meet with me, and we'd set like a council of ministries. We'd set an agenda about how we're moving forward and do that. And then we'll have other ad hoc committees like planning and building team is not going anywhere anytime soon, not until we're in a place. So what's next on the list? Oh, let me talk about the heart of worship and multiplying the worship experience. In August, I had the great experience with meeting with half of our congregation in small group to hear your heart. And what I heard was, one of the things I heard was, we want to have worship in 2 styles. We want to have a contemporary style and a traditional style. We're moving in that direction. Right now, I want us to be strong as a community. Formation team wants us to be strong as a community. And so when we go to 2 services, we want to move from strength to strength. And so what that's going to take is for us growing our congregation. I had a meeting today, or a side conversation, I should say. A side conversation to say, we need to put more chairs in here. Because we need to grow this group so that when we're ready, we don't look puny when we go to 2 services, okay? Would you like to go to strength, okay? And so to do that, I need your help. I need you to be here as often as possible. And I need you to invite people to come and be with us. We're blending worship right now, trying to give everybody a little something of everything. And 6 baptisms next week. That's going to be different. I promise you. I'm not putting on a tie, but I'll be wearing something different next week, okay? But I need your help with that, okay? Thank these 32 people who've gotten us to this place. We're going to where God has us. God's got a building for us. God's got a place for us. God's got land for us. We need to be spending time in prayer, saying, God, open that up. God, make us ready. God, if somebody's got some land and God, their hearts need to be softened, we need to be praying for that, right? Okay? We need to be people of prayer. So I'm just kind of giving you a little structure of how we're gonna get there worship-wise. Thank God that the Civitan's were agreeable for us to start in this place, amen?
Amen.
And the Civitan's have been agreeable to letting us be in this place at least for the next 2 years, while we make plans to go somewhere God has for us. Okay, so we need to be good stewards of this place and fill it up. Okay, and we need to be ready to strike when God says move. When God says break camp and leave, we need to be ready to break camp and leave. Okay, this is the good stuff of God. But join me in prayer. Join me in prayer for the next thing God has for this congregation. Where is God leading us? We need prayer about who God would have sit in these chairs that are next to you, that are open. Okay? God already knows. God's already got a plan. We just need to assimilate ourselves to the plan. I think we're going to have a period of question and answer right now. Who's leading the question and answer? Me? Who has a question? Somebody's going to break the ice. Brian, I'll ask the first question. Brian, how did you come up with 10 acres of land?
A couple of things. We've had people recommend that we look for something in the range of 10 to 15 acres to be able to continue to grow the church after we're no longer here. We actually looked at 2 churches, I'll say in relative history, probably in the last 15 years that have built in the Clayton area. One is the just Lutheran Church, the Lutheran Church out on 42 West. Their property started as 10 acres. If you recall, they started with 1 building. They now have 3 buildings, and now they've added on the parking lot, playground out back. But they're sitting on 10 acres. St. Anne Catholic Church going down towards Smithfield. They purchased 15 acres of land for their church. They started out with 1 building. You see the possibility here, 1 building. Now they have 3 buildings on that piece of property, and they have more property, remaining property to keep expanding that facility. So that's kind of how we got to the magical 10 acres.
Yeah, how many acres are we going to need just to put all of our lovely cars on?
We've come from a downtown church where we're used to parking, and I grew up in a downtown church in Wilmington. We're used to parking on the streets, and we really didn't have a parking lot. But when you start looking at it and counting cars and spaces, and we'll build it in phases, but a 200 space parking lot is going to take up about 2 to 2.5 acres of land once you put in all the buffers that are required for everything. So, you know, part of the property that you're buying is to be able to park cars on. And hopefully a bunch of cars.
Other questions?
Dan, tell us how we came up with 3 years.
How did we come up with 3 years?
We found land today. How did we come up with 3 years?
Yeah, we found land today. I've got lots of engineers among us, got architects among us. They say if we bought land today or had somebody gave us land today, don't pray for that too. Somebody just give us 20 acres, that'd be wonderful. It would take all that 3 years of planning and building to design what we need and to actually do the permits, do the construction. So we're looking at least 3 years. Plus, the bank wants us to have 3 to 5 years of giving history before they'll loan us the money. But if somebody gives us the land, that'd be great. We just need to raise the money to build the building, right? Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
This is not a question, it's a suggestion.
Yes.
When we look at the numbers like $350,000 in 6 months, that looks big.
Yeah.
But if you divide it down, $58,000 a month divided by 209, it's like $300 a person, a
That's right.
family. So when you put it out there that way, like for me, I'm thinking, oh, that's doable, I can do that.
Thank you.
She's a numbers girl, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, we put big numbers up there, but, you know.
If you can divide it down for families, and you know that if a family gave $280 to $300 a month over their offering for the next 6 months, we would hit $350.
Wow. Thank you. There's a committee. Other questions? Hey, it's great to see everybody. Anything else? Y'all go in God's peace. God has great plans for us.